Happy miércoles. Miércoles. I hope how's your connection? It sounds like we're having some troubles. Where are you? This looks so festive.
Yeah. No, I'm in the house. We're in the new, we're in our new kitchen, or we're in our new kind of new part of the house we just redid here. So I got booted out of the other room.
So you got to invest in like a mesh Wi-Fi. Let's hope it holds up.
Yeah, is it holding up?
So far, so good. I don't know. We kicked it off with little issues, but so today I'm doing Dutch old fashioned.
That's unbelievable.
Bottle number 30. And I want to stand corrected. I know we have some fact checkers in the audience usually. So Lisa Suennen actually shamed us, saying that actually Japanese are known for their whiskey. And I did remember back on my Tokyo trip for Health 2.0 Tokyo, where I think myself, Matthew, a bunch of others, Yo from Ed Pier, we were drinking some great whiskey. So I actually, just one little fact, apparently whiskey, I looked it up. I was prepared, Jim.
Right.
Yamazaki was the first Japanese whiskey, and the production started in 1924, but the first sort of whiskey making was 1870. So they go way back.
Yeah, and what's the versus, like, where whiskey is? I think of Irish whiskey. Here, I'm going to switch Wi-Fi here.
Let me text our guest because we're running a little bit late. I'll just talk. Yeah, so the shot is back, and looks like Jim is probably just completely checked out at this point now. I was just trying to take up time, so I was saying that you're now
give it a restart here.
I was just occupying space and time and saying, Jim already checked out for the holidays. I know we were talking a bit if we should even have this today or just kind of take a break a little, but no rest for the restless, right?
No rest for the restless. No, I'm pretty excited about this. So we have our guest in the waiting room. Do you want to tee her up, or what's the deal?
I will tee her up. So I'm trying to remember, it must have been yet another JPM event. So cheers, first of all.
Cheers. Happy holidays. We got through, we almost through this year.
Almost. So the next guest has been in clinical trial space for now, I think, half a decade or so. Half a decade. But she'll tell us about it herself. So I'm going to invite Michelle Longmire.
Fantastic. See this.
You made it, Michelle.
Hey guys.
Hey, welcome.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
No, you guys haven't met at the JPM somewhere, no?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, you're the Metables. I've definitely been at. You guys always have the coolest T-shirts.
Thank you. We like to think so. We take our swag very seriously.
So I've definitely been at the same events as you and your team and everything else, and you're well known, so your reputation precedes you.
Oh.
And
don't
Michelle,
tell my parents. They would say it's for completely different reasons.
I know it's. I think, where are you? West Coast, right?
Oh, I love this. Yes, I'm on the West Coast.
But we're I'm sort of showing off my whiskey collection, and it's already.
I love that. I'm like
here
with the Joe and the Juice, but I could completely do something more exciting. I've got my office stash.
Up to you. Completely up to you.
Okay, can I quickly go see what I can find?
Love it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Love it, 100%. I love the idea. It's very, what's the word? Kind of Mad Men. Kind of.
You know what? This is why Michelle is such a great entrepreneur. She just pivoted from Joe and the Juice to some hard liquor. So, or whatever she's going to find over there. Exactly.
I love it.
Somebody would be really really upset if I open this because it's a bottle of Pappy Von Winkle. It's probably like a $400 bottle of whiskey.
I think you have to do it.
You know what?
It's one of those years, Michelle. It's one of those years.
It is one of those years. I'm wondering. I don't even know where we got this. This is a really nice bottle of whiskey. I'm glad I found it.
Save it for maybe a real occasion, not at 11 a.m. or whatever time it is. So, but
well, I'm giving you permission. I'm giving you permission.
So why don't you introduce yourself to our, I'm sure many who watch and listen to our show already know you, but tell us all about you. From childhood, I mean, we got time. No.
We got time.
Okay, so, well, I, am the CEO of Medible. I trained in medicine and I love, I guess I think of myself mostly as an inventor. I grew up in a small town, Los Alamos, New Mexico, that has, a rich scientific kind of background, legacy, heritage. Actually, fun fact, my dad is a master falconer. So I grew up doing falconry with my dad. And my mom is a plutonium chemist. So I call her my hot mama. And it was a super fun childhood. I grew up dirt bike racing and doing science fair experiments, doing lots of fun things. Skiing, was an ice hockey player. And then, so that's kind of the backdrop.
Ice hockey.
Yeah.
In Texas.
No, New Mexico.
New Mexico.
Yeah.
Okay. Your Wi-Fi is still going in and out.
Oh, it is?
No, not you, Michelle. Jim decided for the holiday edition to change Wi-Fi. It's all good.
I'm getting Wi-Fi shamed here, Michelle. I'm getting Wi-Fi shamed.
It happens, Jim.
So that's a very typical upbringing. I can picture like a falcon landing on your arm and motorbiking and
it was interesting. I mean, definitely I have this Christmas photo. I should have featured it for today. And it's me, my brother, my mom, and my dad. And my mom's like holding this evil Santa. And my dad has, a massive goshawk on his arm. And I'm like 80s out with my bangs and this dress. And, it was an interesting existence in childhood for sure.
Yeah. So like you're an inventor and but I have to ask this, I want to, not to cut across, but so do falcons have personalities? Do you
totally. Yeah. It's really interesting. So, my dad's really into just birds of prey. And he's also someone who worked for the World Wildlife Foundation in enabling endangered species to breed in captivity. So he actually developed the genetic assay that was used to sex whooping cranes and birds. So he's really into, enabling endangered species to no longer be endangered. So anyhow, we'd have these birds and they were part of this breeding program. And one of the key things is that the birds imprint and they will see the falconer as their spouse. And so they're very protective of the falconer and therefore they hate the falconer's wife, hate.
Wow.
So the personalities are extremely possessive and jealous. And the female falcons are very different than the ones that we had. They would be the ones who would really fall in love with the master falconer. And the male falcons had a different kind of profile. It's really interesting, but they were phenomenal birds. And peregrine falcons are the fastest land animal. And the whole fovea is positioned and they dive in an Archimedes spiral and they actually hit terminal velocity when they strike the bird. So anyway, it was super interesting and very cool. Lots of science and interesting times.
Wow.
So how did you then come around to Medible, right? Because while
Medible's actually about falconry.
Is it?
I was going to say, I was trying to make it out. You have your logo there. I was like, this is maybe kind of looks like a falcon, but maybe not.
No. So then, once I stayed in New Mexico, went to undergraduate at the University of New Mexico. After essentially finished with a degree in biology and decided to go to medical school also in New Mexico, and then ventured out farther west to California to Stanford for my degree or my training in dermatology. So went to Stanford and really I realized that all along I was this entrepreneur, but didn't really know what entrepreneurship was. So in research efforts in the past, prior to being at Stanford, I always wanted to commercialize what I was working on. I had a background in nanoscience. I worked at the NIH developing novel nanoparticles. And I was the one in the lab who always said, like, let's start a company. Like, we could do something with this. But it wasn't really till I got to Stanford and was training in dermatology there that I realized, wow, there's this whole world of entrepreneurship, and it's not that different than the world of discovery, innovation, invention in the lab. And so it was really there where I was a physician scientist and leading up research in rare disease, in the hub of kind of technology innovation, that I decided, a lot of the things I wanted to do to advance research would be best done in the setting of entrepreneurship versus the setting of academia. So went on a mission to start Medable, was still a resident at Stanford. I think I had a team of engineers when I was still in my residency. But then as we started to develop it and really see the opportunity, I kind of got to a juncture where I had to say, I'm going to go for, try a tenure track and go for research. Am I going to, really branch out and just dive in and go to, see where I can take Medable? So then I left Stanford. We got some funding from a really impressive biotech CEO. And I was able to leave Stanford and really build it out.
Yeah. And so you were doing medicine research of your falconry training and your ice hockey training, and then you were setting up a company, obviously tons of
right. I had taken, a break from my falconry and my ice hockey, but yes.
And so what was that like? Was that completely stressful? Did you just adapt into it because you have these kind of cool, inventive parents, or how did you bridge,
Oh my God, the whole time my parents they're like, why aren't you just doing the dermatology thing? Like, that's a really good gig, Michelle. Why? I don't even think it was really until we made this most recent fundraising that they're like, maybe she's onto something. Maybe she has a job that could, rival her dermatology. But no, I mean, I'm still doing it. We're kind of just breaking through in a sense. But it's super challenging. I mean, I think, it's the thing I love about it. One of the many things I love is that it really is always different. Like, I think of it as a big optimization problem. At different phases, you have all sorts of different things you're optimizing for, but, that's what makes it really challenging. I also love teams. So I was a collegiate athlete, and I just love being on teams. I love working on teams and building teams. So the combination of the challenge, the team, and then specifically the problem we're out to solve makes it really fun, but it's definitely super hard.
It's interesting you talked about teams, right? Because I also look at teams. It is optimizing everybody's talents, right? And how do people work together, and how do they interface and interact? So I think the combination of the optimization of where your company is at, but that so much depends on the team that you build, right? And I know you guys have been at it for 5 years, but I want to jump a little bit back. Like, while you were doing research, did Medable come up as a problem statement for you? Like, how did Medable as an idea, how was it born?
Yeah, absolutely. So my research was in this rare disease called systemic sclerosis, and it's a disease that affects many organ systems, specifically the skin and the lungs, as two of those. And essentially, it has like a 90% fatality rate, and it affects women in a 9-to-1 ratio for really kind of poorly understood reasons. The whole disease is very poorly understood. So my research was looking at, one, is there a genetic cause? And the research really suggests that there's not a specific genetic cause that you can point to that we were able to identify. The second factor was, how does the environment and life choices, and not even necessarily choices, but how does our environment, the way we live, impact these disease outcomes? So my research became looking at identical twins with this disease, because you'd have a common genetic background. And now a rare disease and identical twins is like the rarest, of participants to be able to engage with. So it was really through that where I was, trying to enable research with some of the rarest, sets of twin pairs and patients in the world, and also looking at this big data problem where the specific questions were around, environmental context, in addition to clinical data. So it was really that I thought, if we could connect patients and also just a broad kind of awareness around mobile and connectivity being underutilized in healthcare, that we began to see an opportunity to, one, just really enable connectivity through mobile, and then two, really facilitate research kind of anytime, anywhere, global access, bigger data through technology. And so, yeah, those were kind of some of the founding ideas and kind of motivational concepts.
And like, do you find, when I'm looking at, looking at your website and you're showing the connected patient and they've got the stuff attached to them and they're going across their connected scale, like, when you go and talk to, big, biotech companies and pharma companies and nutrition, are you just like way out there, or do you have to like bring it all back to them? Like, I just feel like in clinical research it's just been a place that just doesn't run towards adopting.
I certainly saw Michelle just show up places. I remember like seeing you in the hallway in Berlin. All of a sudden, you showed up at Bayer, right? Like, so,
Like,
so definitely a great entrepreneur.
I used to be a world traveler, but
we all used to be.
I know. Yeah, I think that really there were certainly people in pharma, right? Like Eugene and like many people kind of on the innovation side who saw the value of digital and connected kind of decentralized clinical trials. Like, let's say this is 2 years ago. Yeah. And I think that the idea that there was something more there was definitely kind of beginning to be revealed, or I should say the evidence. Really with COVID, and I'd say slightly prior to COVID, like in the last 6 months, in the 6 months prior to COVID, we started to see a lot more momentum around the adoption of digital. But then with COVID, once the sites really closed, you ended up with no alternative. And so we kind of went from an edge case to a main case in terms of the necessity of what we were providing. So there's definitely been a big shift. With that said, I do think that was, the momentum was building.
Right. So momentum was building, and then you're doing research in the whole, we can't say the word. We have the kind of little warning sign on the COVID. I can't see the light. But
you don't really get penalized for anything. If you were drinking, you probably have to take an extra shot or something. But I don't think we've implemented that. So.
I love it. Okay, yeah, exactly. That I need my little sign. But yeah, I think the whole shift, when you look at telehealth digital, everyone is looking to enable connectivity and improve access given some of the restrictions.
Yeah. But do you feel like, so, and you're doing work in the specific, in the kind of the plague space, we can't say the word, but you're doing work. Yeah. That's
yeah, a lot. A number of the therapeutic trials, vaccines, and interventional therapies have needed to have virtual enrollment, and recruitment, and then also even participation be somewhat decentralized. And so, yeah, these types of technologies have played a key role in the current environment.
It's interesting, just even some of the nomenclature, because to your point, like maybe 2 years ago, we were all sort of calling this virtual clinical trials. Mm-hmm. But I think honestly, in the last like 6 months-ish, is more around the terminology of decentralized, right? Mm-hmm. And hence, I know you guys are also joined. We just had AMIR on last week talking about DTRA. So is it something, because you guys the team, you can generally count it on, I don't know, dozens and dozens, few dozen people that are sort of driving this. Is the nomenclature changed, or I'm just behind?
No, I think you're absolutely right. Virtual was kind of where it started, in terms of some of the framing. And then the FDA said like the virtual is synthetic data and decentralized is, outside of a site. So I think that started to gain more traction. I think certainly AMIR and Craig have really galvanized the community with what they're doing at DTRA and helping to advance, a lot of the, really to drive some of the initiatives that are needed from a collaboration perspective to advance decentralized. And I guess kind of my perspective is that I think even the word decentralized is still somewhat not antiquated, but I would say it's only decentralized if you say it's from the site perspective. It's patient-centered if you start with the patient, versus decentralized, which would say a reference to the former state.
Right.
So maybe there's an opportunity for it to further evolve. But I think that definitely decentralized is the accepted and kind of the phrase people, or the terminology that people use right now.
Yeah, you're right. The decentral, I mean, I don't want to not, the DTRA kind of sounds cool. Like the DTRA.
It does, right.
It sounds kind of cool. But this idea, yeah, decentralized, because I was even listening, we were trying to pick apart that definition last week. And this whole, I was thinking about this, well, like if I was on a clinical trial, like, what do I have to live inside the clinic? What do you mean? Like, why are you, why do you decentralized?
Right.
Like, I gotta go home at night, right?
Right.
I do think it's because, it's centralized versus decentralized. That's it. I mean, it's just the way, to your point, it's like the evolvement of it, right? And and actually, if we look at clinical trials, sure, they start somewhere in a global organization, highly centralized, and going out to regions. So I mean, I don't know. But I think as part of DTRA, Michelle, I think I'm sure Craig and others will listen in AMIR.
So what's
the I should tell them, hey, we need to make a math, and we need the terminology for 2021. People, what are we going with?
Exactly.
Yeah.
We can't keep people knowing what's happening. We've got to create more confusion.
Right. But the world is just going through this massive, like the whole world is sitting on, like, it's like a reality show watching these vaccines go through a trial, right? Like we're all, like, even if you're not a scientist or you're not in digital health or healthcare, like we're all learning, okay, now we're releasing lots, and it's being, based on this, and we're studying the evidence. So this must be just like what's happening with you. Is it all kinds of inbound? Is it just a crazy time and you're trying to process all kinds of new opportunities?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's certainly from a business perspective, an opportunity to show the importance of decentralized and digital clinical trials. And so with that in mind, we've played an important role in making sure that the studies that were in flight could keep going, ensuring that studies that were being planned could leverage these new methodologies. I also think it's just interesting as a phenomenon that, the world knows what a clinical trial is. And I think, really clinical trials have suffered from a lack of awareness. And, only 3% of people with a given condition participate. With that said, I think, as a physician, I definitely see that when a patient is really frustrated with their therapeutic options, they're looking for new options. And so, I'm hopeful that this will raise awareness, I think, both for patients and honestly also for physicians, to think about novel therapies and clinical trials as a source of access to new medications and a really important part of, how we actually get new medication. So yeah, I think, I see it as an opportunity. I also think it's interesting in Silicon Valley, like nobody was probably talking about clinical trials. And now, it's a really interesting area for investment. So definitely there's a moment in time right now that I think all of us who have been pushing for change and progress and advancement, really technology being a key part of this whole thing, there's an opportunity for us to really to show what the benefit really is.
So Michelle, actually, you mentioned Silicon Valley and just more mass awareness of clinical trials and what it takes, and probably to a certain extent even complexity, right? Because we have some naysayers that are saying, well, they would never take the vaccine just because it was sped through without understanding. But I know for our listeners and viewers, you also just had a pretty large round, 90 plus mil. And did that, so congrats, first of all, let's drink to that.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay. I'm opening my pappy.
Open it up.
Right. Like I think you
there's something to celebrate, Eugene. It's not just another, what is it, Wednesday?
There you go. It is Wednesday, isn't it?
I don't even know most of the time.
I have no idea.
Seriously, but did that? I mean, obviously, we all know as entrepreneurs it takes time, right? Doesn't happen overnight. Did that round, to the extent that you can and want to disclose, did that come around quick, just because of this 2020, right? And the craziness? Or were you already in plans and it just kind of the normal process took its hold?
Yeah, I mean, definitely the dynamics of this round were different than the former rounds, like where, you know, we really were doing a tremendous amount of, you know, selling the vision versus I think some of the actual material impact opportunity. And I think the business has been, you know, the adoption of digital has been growing considerably in the last 2 years. With that said, you know, I think with COVID and really the key role that we've played in that process of enabling those in-flight studies and additional studies, new studies, when we went to do the funding after having closed this round earlier this year, you know, it was really what we were asking ourselves and why we even wanted to pursue it was there's a massive opportunity to make digital kind of a standard, to make decentralized a core part of how this is done. And so we wanted to have as many resources as we could to drive that forward in terms of the entire system that would be needed. So yeah, when we went to fundraise, I mean, it's definitely the first time where the interest level was so high. You know, and it was interesting because I'd heard about, you know, that other side of the table or that different part of the journey. It's oddly not that much easier because like then you've got, you know, everyone you've engaged, they're really excited about the opportunity. You're really excited to work with all of these different people, you know, but you kind of got to you need to make some tough decisions. And, but yeah, we definitely saw a level of interest that we had not seen before.
Okay. Awesome. And then when you're walking in with something, you know, that must have been fascinating for you. Cause like even, you know, the idea of like the quantum, like, you know, just that step change of doing it and kind of articulating the plans. And obviously how did you break that challenge down? Like telling someone, you know, okay, here's what we're going to do with your 91 million, you know, like buy a lot of falcons with that, you know?
Right. We're going to start, you know, we're really going to get deeper into falconry. But yeah, I think, well, the good thing in a sense is that you have a strong concept of where you're going to apply this funding, but you also, I think one of the beautiful things about Silicon Valley is there's a level of uncertainty that's accepted. And so, you know, we're not putting forward a 50-page business plan saying that, you know, this last dollar is spent here. We understand resource allocation in the ways which we want to drive it immediately. But we also have flexibility as this evolves to make strategic decisions. And I think that's really, really important because as we've seen in 2020, you don't know what the future state is. And we want to be, you know, we want to be the best company in a space and we want to be able to make those strategic choices when we need to and act very quickly. So I'd say the resourcing and the you know, really what we're going after is to enable effective therapies to reach patients faster. We want our technology to be the best partner to a patient in a new medicine, period. And so, you know, I think that we're just starting to open up that opportunity and it's going to drive access. It's going to drive engagement, ultimately enable people to get more value from clinical trials as patients. It's going to enable efficiency and ideally also advance our ability to understand safety and efficacy, therefore understand the medications earlier and better. And so that's really kind of what we're going after. And that's, you know, why people are betting on our company.
Yeah. And can you solve the whole issue? Like Eugene's doing a podcast on digital therapeutics. Like, are you doing studies?
I'm cheating on Jim.
She's cheating on me. Are you doing studies? Are you doing studies on digital? Like, are some of the programs, are you studying digital therapeutics? And can you solve that whole thing? Can you solve the whole thing?
Like solve the whole thing, Eugene. So why have I not been on your podcast? No, I mean, digital therapeutics are definitely an important part of, you know, the whole opportunity for therapeutics. And I'd say ultimately, what is a therapeutic out to do? It's to better someone's life. And what's exciting about digital is it's saying, look, this doesn't have to relate to chemistry that's ingested. There's behaviors we can essentially prompt that drive the chemistry in our brain to actually drive better outcomes. So I think digital therapeutics are super interesting in an area certainly we're working on. I think, you know, our core focus has been on interventional therapies. And so how is it that we can get medicines to patients faster through more effective clinical research? but I think digital therapeutics are a massive opportunity. And as we all know, I mean, I'd say, let's take it back to basics. I can only survive my job by exercising every day. That's not necessarily a digital therapeutic, but if I have a digital tool, like, the coaching tool, and I think what Eugene's wife and him and Eugene are doing is super powerful. The things that motivate you to do the things that actually make you better, feel better, bring wellness are extremely powerful. So I'm very excited about digital therapeutics broadly.
And Jim, thank you very much. For those who want to follow DTX podcast with Eugene Borovich, please go to digitalhealthtoday.com.
I only have a few more podcasts left.
Do I have the Dan Kendall voice down yet? Or
I
no?
know. I was going to say, it's awesome that that's on the Digital Health Today platform.
We're pretty convinced this is a pandemic only podcast stage. I know I did my, I'll do my, I said.
Yeah. You're talking about this one, the shot of digital health therapy? No. Jim, I don't know. I think we're gonna have to go 100 seasons.
Yeah, I'll renew for post-pandemic. I'll commit to that today.
We were just
bring it. Fantastic.
See, we're working on. You're probably going to be in our book now because we're working on. Oh, I can't say that yet.
No, I think you know what? Let it out.
An announcement.
We're transcribing all the shows and we're mapping it against Levon, or we're thinking about the share price of the digital health companies and the cases.
Oh, I like it.
Yeah.
A little, coffee table book. I mean, Jim and I created.
There's that whole narrative called Wall Street Bets. We could just have like digital health bets, and it could be, we could track it on our Robinhood app and look at all the tickers.
Yeah, I like it. But but when you're studying medicines, not to bring it back to digital health tech, because I was like my company, we do injectable medication management tracking, right? So the standards that we're being held to, like as a technology company, a lot of companies try to hold us to medicinal kind of RCT standards for evaluating a use case, where it's our use case, they're different. They need to be studied. You need to use evidence to show the impact of it, but it's just different. Like the impact, like you said, of a run every day, you would study that differently than you would a new molecular agent that you're ingesting, right?
I think, yes, certainly the rigor, I don't even say like the science, the outcomes, you could have equally rigorous outcomes. But certainly, to your point, that I guess the big difference there in a sense is the safety. So, one of our active areas is around, of course, ensuring safety of the patients on the trial. So I think there are definitely some differences.
Yeah. And I'm just wondering, could it be faster? You know what I mean? Like this, so you have, so you take like a medicine and then you put like some kind of digital wrap around with it.
Yep.
And, could you do the digital wrap around faster? That just feels like it should happen faster,
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that again, like kind of where we see our impact is, the technology partner to the patient on the new medicine, right? And so I think what that digital experience could look like is ultimately our goal is to bring value to that patient. So I think it could be a number of different things in the future.
Mm-hmm. What do you think, Eugene?
Jim, I think you just should patent whatever you just said before. I don't know.
Maybe I'm here writing my patent so I can get it in first.
I have so many patents. We've invented a few products on the show as well. We had Facehead.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, we had. What do we have?
Jim is like the patent machine. He just
way to go, Jim.
I'm trying to keep myself in the lifestyle I'm accustomed to.
So any kind of hints? I mean, so you've been with Medable at it 4 or 5,
like
6?
5 years.
5 years
since I really kind of say it was my day job, so to speak.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, it's tough, right? Like I'm back kind of with Marina as of January. It's been almost a year. Fun as shit, but it's not easy, right? I mean, we all 3 entrepreneurs here. Like any sort of thoughts, advice, hints to power. Exercise is one big piece of it, of course. I need to do more of that.
I like that.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was really interesting yesterday when Elon Musk tweeted about these darkest days of Tesla and they tried to sell to Apple, right? So the big takeaway for me, and I see this with some of my friends in Silicon Valley who, have companies that are far higher profile than mine and are, farther along in the journey, that like awesome company that was, there are so many days where this was so hard and where they didn't even necessarily know it was going to be survivable for the company. And, and I think that just like, is one example, that tweet where Elon, had reached out, that he was saying that he had reached out to Apple to talk about buying the company. It's hard to even imagine that, right? But you could imagine how hard of a place, they were in at that point with Tesla. So I think my big observation is, figure, if you can, stay in the game and just keep driving it forward. I mean, I think about so many people told us no, and it was fascinating. Then I'm getting emails from them on once, the round was announced, like, hey, is there still room? And I mean, I appreciate that, in a sense, we were at a different point when I spoke to a lot of those people. So no criticism at all. They're making their choices. But I think, you just got to stay in the game, and it's never about what anyone else thinks you can do. It's 100% about what you really believe is possible.
Right.
And I always say, sorry, I was going to say, always focus on the champions. I mean, I remember maybe like, I don't know, 4
100%.
years ago, right? Like I saw Taha, right? And he's like, have you met Michelle? I mean, the team is amazing. The product is amazing, and sort of focusing on the champions, I think is also a big component of that.
Yeah. I mean, those are the people, when you're like, how do we really pull this off? Or like, here's the challenges we're facing. Those are people who provide you that critical win in your sales. And I think as entrepreneurs, we could do more to provide that for one another, but sometimes we're just so heads down, pushing things forward. But certainly, we have investors, and I have mentors who are also CEOs who have been so critical to just being like, no, you got it, at those points when you're just like, it's really hard.
Right.
So I'm not a falconer in any way, shape, or form, but I'm just like picturing, it's like you're cruising, but then you just like zoom into the business model and you go in.
Terminal velocity, strike that duck. The duck is down,
Like I definitely think if I went on a medical trial, I'd be like sending my samples up to a falcon or something.
Oh, we do that. We're the only company using carrier pigeons. So, and it's really just because that's the food for our falcons.
But
we should have done this on April 1st. This particular episode. Damn it.
I know.
I was listening. I was showing my son, Conan O'Brien, was going back to the late night talk show host. He was going back to Harvard to talk about his whatever success and all that. And he just started school in University of Edinburgh. And his big message was that, you're looking up at me on stage, but this is kind of an illusion. This is an illusion. And that's, when people see, if you're thinking about like, how can I be really successful as a writer or a comedian, an entrepreneur?
Right.
And I think we kind of get really good, in like Silicon Valley, or Californians are particularly good at this. Like we, of creating the illusion of success, like Elon Musk, everything's going fantastic. And, for people out the outside saying like Elon Musk was going to sell to Apple, I can't believe it,
Right. Yeah. I think the undercurrent, or like the back, the real story is that none of this stuff is easy ever. And there's just a tremendous amount of luck. And there's also just a tremendous amount of stamina that is required. I guess, interest, like being in Silicon Valley, kind of, I don't know Elon Musk, but I know, some of the entrepreneurs who had really have amazing companies, is like, I don't think anybody wants to present it as easy at all. But I do think that Silicon Valley has a way of glorifying, the big successes, which of course, but yeah, I think, building these companies from scratch is so hard, but that's also what makes it so rewarding.
Right. It's the inspiration, like the two sides of it. It's the inspiration. You see a story of someone, doing something impossible and surviving, the ups and downs. And then it's funny when I was probably told this before, Eugene, when Irish entrepreneurs go into Boston, we tend to go to Boston to raise capital, maybe to California since it's a direct flight now, or was, but they would go there and the people always loved investing in the Irish entrepreneurs, if it was like a match, because they know the Irish entrepreneur would always downplay, they would be like, whatever they were selling, it was always, it was always 20, 30, 40% better than what they were saying. And then they would look at the, you know, the equivalent, like well-trained, you know, American pitching the idea, and they knew it was always 30% worse or whatever than what they were saying.
I love that. I actually think my kind of idea or concept is you start to see more, you know, highly biased perspective here, but as you start to see more female founded companies, you know, kind of start to surface, I think what we're going to see is that, wow, these were undervalued. These were companies that had real business models, and they didn't actually get a lot of the sell it on the vision at a very high valuation. And I think we're going to start to see, like, these are really strong businesses. And because I think one of the early observations I had in fundraising in Silicon Valley is it was very hard to sell the idea. Once we had the metrics and they were, you know, irrefutable in the strength of the metrics, it became something that, you know, was more appealing. But I think when you don't fit the profile, you know, you have a lot more headwind, and you go back and you continue to just build it out to a point where it's really very clear what the value is.
Right.
Listen, at the end of the day, it's always easier to sell outcomes than ideas, right? Like,
totally. And I think that's
point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you prefer? I mean, I always prefer selling on the vision. I always prefer selling on the vision. You know, like the metrics get all messy. You know, people want details.
Dude, you know, it's not April Fool's, right? No.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, like, you know, I don't know. There were people who bought in and really invested in us on the vision for sure. But I think there was a lot of early pressure to show the results.
Right. But that's you know, it's also like an engineer and that kind of a medical mindset.
Right.
Like, you know, where's the evidence? What's the data saying?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think that to me, that also feels like an important part of, you know, yes, you have to be backed at the idea phase in general, right? Yeah. But also, you know, you want to show the impact. And I think the better you can do that, that is also one of my kind of pointers or learnings of the whole thing is, you know, really have very clear data around the proof points that show the value of what you're doing, you know. And I think the earlier you have that, the clearer that is. We realized that we had awesome metrics and we probably hadn't looked at them early enough, you know? So yeah, I think that you want to really get those metrics together and show that impact.
And do you think so when you look at right now, and this will probably feels like it's changing constantly, but that kind of Irish, you know, kind of American phenomenon is happening with female male founders, that either they're not being allowed to sell on the vision, or they're not selling on the vision, or they're not, you know, that there's a discount.
Yeah, I guess I think it's kind of what you were describing from the Irish in a sense, was that, you know, maybe it's just whatever the resistance point is, you know. I think that if you encounter more resistance for whatever reason, you know, then you really, the people who are able to break through that because there was more resistance, I think, you know, there's really something to look at there. And I think that's just an important observation across categories. And I hope that we get to a point where everyone encounters the same, you know, resistance, and that would be equality, right? This is never easy for anybody, so don't get me wrong. But I do think that, you know, when you look at the profiles that are being invested in by the single digits, those, you know, groups have encountered more resistance. I mean, it's pretty clear from the data, right? And I think that those who are able to somehow break through, and there's probably lots who are not able to, who should have, that there are really strong businesses there.
Yeah, fascinating.
So stay in the game. Jim, I think you're going to have to do your video editing magic again.
Yeah, that was Michelle's. The team from UD Stokes.
Really?
Yeah, we clipped him. He gave us his piece of advice, and it was basically stay in the game. There was so much stuff coming at you all the time right now that, you know, so you guys are in simpatico.
I love that. Yeah, that's my big thing. Just somehow stay in the game.
Yeah, exactly.
Love it.
Cool. That was awesome. Fantastic. Thank you for joining. Thank you for
so fun.
Breaking open a $400 bottle, but you know, Save it for
whoever
your
owns
team.
this, if they're watching, they're like, Michelle, did she open that bottle of
You
Pappy's?
totally deserve it. You got you got Eugene and Jim's permission. So you can.
Thank you. I'll tell whoever owns it here at Medical that I have your permission to drink their Pappy's.
And happy holidays to you guys and to all watching. And
Good night.
hopefully
Good
we
night.
leave this crazy year. Jim, are we gonna do this next week or are we gonna take a break? Let's decide with Michelle.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm on the fence about this. You know, we might need to
Just take a break.
take a break.
Wow.
Yeah, we've been pretty
Wow.
good. Like we've been total.
We
rocks
haven't missed a week. That's pretty amazing.
Really?
every week.
That's
for
a
the
pretty
whole-
strong track record to break right at the turn of the year.
I know.
Maybe it's
Looking
just
like-
you two taking shots. I can send you the Pappy's.
right.
You know what, Jim?
Yeah, no, we would do that. We would do that.
Actually, let's even do like a 10-15 minute episode where we're just drinking for New Year's. All right.
I
I
mean,
love that. I think
All right.
that's
There you go,
happen.
Michelle. You pushed this. You pushed this into it.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
needs to happen. That's how we should close 2020, right? Just
right. Just taking a
True.
shot.
behind
And going,
us.
True
Behind
that.
us.
So cheers. And for those that's still with us, hit that subscribe button to get us to Joe Rogan status.
awesome. Thanks, Alan. Happy New Year.
Thank you.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
You too.